All good? All right. Call this meeting to order at 4:30 on Monday, July 22nd. Roll call, please.
Chair Lindsay,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kamra,
Yes.
Member Delgavio, Member Millman, Member Taft.
Great. Thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda for today?
Yes, you have a minor change in that the minutes have not been finalized yet. So Sarah completed a draft. I haven't reviewed them yet. So we'll have a package of minutes for you at your next meeting. So the consent agenda, we will just take that off today and we will bring it to the next ASRB meeting. And then you do have some desk items for two projects, one at 385 Moore Road and one at 219 Lindenbrook, or two at 219 Lindenbrook. And the planners will address those with their presentations.
Okay. And just so we're clear, next meeting will be September.
That's correct. No meetings in August. Yes. It is, I believe so. It can't be the first Monday because it always falls on Labor Day. So it is the 9th, I believe. Check.
Yep.
Yes, September 9th.
Okay. So minutes are removed from the agenda. Does anyone in the public, either in the room or online, want to make a statement or add an item to the agenda that is not currently on the agenda? No one online? Oh,
There are no raised hands.
no. Okay. You. Consent agenda, anything that applies today?
We don't have.
No. Okay. All right. Let's begin with the public hearing. First item on the agenda tonight is I've got multiple copies of things. Is it 219 Lindenbrook? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, let me just share my screen. Okay, hello and thank you. My name is Melanie Olson, Associate Planner, and I'll be introducing the project at 219 Lindenbrook Road for formal design review with the ASRB. The project includes primarily a revision to the previously approved main residence roof design from a gable ridge roof to a flat roof design. The overall project would demolish an existing guest house to construct a new multi-level single-family main residence with a partial basement, partially demolish an existing one-story single-family residence to convert to an ADU, and construct a second ADU with other site improvements. You received two desk items today from the applicant that include an image of the previously approved materials submitted for formal design review at staff, and an image of the previously installed story poles for ASRB conceptual design review from the January 9th, 2023 meeting. The property is approximately 3.5 acres in the SCP-5 zoning district. There are many areas that slope down into slopes greater than 35%, which are primarily shown in the gray areas, aside from most areas that are already developed. The property has 3 existing buildings, including a single-story main residence and a guest house and a shed. As previously stated, the major changes that come to the ASRB include the design of the roofs from the gable ridge roof to a flat, more modern roof that are proposed only for the main residence. The overall height decreases slightly from 29.9 feet to 28.9 feet. However, the overall floor area of the main residence increases slightly from 6,525 square feet to 6,617 square feet, which does not include the partial basement that has been added. So if we're looking at the elevations, this is currently the one on the left is the previously approved main residence with the ridge roof design. And then on the right is the, what the applicant is proposing at this time. So this is the front elevation. This is the side. The rear elevation. And then the north side, which is the right if you're looking at it from the front of the property. Other than the main residence, the applicant has removed the previously approved cabana pool, and they have increased the proposed paved area and surface coverage from 6,460 square feet to 7,055 square feet. No changes have been made to the setbacks or the proposed additional 2 ADUs. Also, the applicant is not proposing any changes to the previously approved materials. And then these are the physical materials that they submitted with formal design review with staff. The applicant is here in person and is available for questions. That concludes my presentation. Staff is happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Sage, I have just a brief process question. I think we have a number of members of this board who have not participated in a formal review previously. Could you just provide us with a sort of a high-level overview of what the scope of our commentary and feedback is in a formal review?
It's very similar to conceptual review. So you have more information, and at the end, it's a recommendation for approval or denial or additional conditions of the project. Whereas the conceptual, you're giving them recommendations to address the next stage. So here, whereas the ASRB is a recommending body, this is the formal design reviews where action is taken on a project. So the ASRB would be recommended for a specific action to myself, the planning director. And so the minor difference is that you are looking to take action on the project versus recommendations to be addressed at another stage.
Thanks. Does anyone on the board have questions?
Yes, no, at every stage, neighbors have input. So whereas a lot of the formal design review items get brought to staff or asked for staff review, we complete that process, and neighbors are still allowed to provide input at that stage, even though there's no public hearing. And we don't do notifications without public hearings, but we keep track of everyone who's participated in the conceptual process, and they are notified of any actions taken at the formal process. So yes, we want to make sure there's full neighbor participation.
Any questions for staff?
Really, you can quickly touch upon the numbers of the maximum area, actually 800.
Sorry, but
Yeah, speak of the microphone.
Sorry, I was.
and address.
Yes, maybe you can, Melanie can briefly touch upon the numbers, page 2 of the summary. Again, to touch upon 8,800 square feet.
Sorry, can you speak a little louder?
Surely, if we look at the second page 2 of the summary, there is a formula
Oh, yes.
for the maximum allowed
Residence size
square
exception?
footage,
Yes.
8,800 square feet. Then in the next paragraph, the proposed total floor area is 9445.
So in Woodside, we look at 2 different buckets of floor area. One is the main residence size, and then the other one is the total floor area. So that formula is only for the main residence size. And then the total floor area is a separate number. Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions?
Just the one. Did they have neighbor review? Have they? Okay, have they had neighbor review?
We noticed the project.
Comments?
No comments. Yeah, we didn't receive anything from any neighbors.
Just a question back on square footage. Is this the increase of result of a taller plate height? Is it the multiple that's coming into effect here? Because the footprint of the structure doesn't look like it's changed significantly.
It's potentially so, especially with flat roofs. We tend to see taller plate heights versus the ridge roof. So that is probably what is causing, because I also didn't notice a major change in the footprint, but the applicant can also speak to that as well.
Great, thanks. Well, let's move on to the applicant.
All right. My name's Adam Biddle. I'm the architect for the project. Good to be back in front of you. This one is a little bit of a unique one, being as how we, I think, year or two ago, went all the way through formal. We actually had the project ready to submit for permit. And then, some people just changed their mind on a few things, resulting of budget and then also just design taste. So we took another look at this. The roof design is really just personal preference of the client. And I don't know, do you have the image of the story poles that I sent over?
Yeah, all the board members have it at their desks.
Okay, and if you made a visit to the site, you'll see that where the house is sits really secondary to the hillside behind it and the trees. And the approach, you're actually approaching a little lower in elevation, working your way up. So in that story pole photo from the last one, you can kind of see that the difference from a gable roof to a flat roof is kind of negligible in terms of height. We did lower the finished floor of the entire main floor to limit the amount of steps and changes in combination with how you compute, as Melanie said, flat roofs compared to pitched roofs. There is generally a little more penalty when you're working with a flat roof, just the way the plate heights work out. But by lowering the finished floor, that's how we were kind of go to almost a net zero a little bit. The bigger change in the site, removing the cabana and the pool that were in the back, it was this little squishy trying to fit all that back there. And the client just decided, we have, as you can see, and also in the side elevation, a pretty good daylighted side of the house, just naturally with the slope. Budget wise and scope wise, it made sense. Well, we can allocate that cabana square footage down to that side where we have a pretty decent sized crawl space. And then removal of the pool. So that's where the total floor area calc actually reduces. So main house slightly increased more because of the roof design, total floor area reduced overall. There's no change to the majority, the approach of the project, the driveway. Driveway has since refined going through formal, getting reviewed by engineering, fire, and planning, of course. So now it's pretty dialed in. Since our last hearing, the project is all set for sewer. That's been coordinated in the right-of-way, I believe a separate permit, coordinated with the neighbor who we share the easement with. I believe the hydrant has already been upgraded. So the house is ready to go, or the site is ready to go. This is just purely kind of a proactive proposed change. And because of the design style change, it's back in front of you. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on this
Great.
one.
Does anyone on the board have questions for the applicant?
It's a pretty private site, so it's hard to get back to it.
And it looks like you minimized the oak removal. You minimize the amount of oaks that would be removed.
There's no change from the previous project. Most of them, I believe, were removed due to health. Doing the arborist report, there is a substantial amount of trees as you saw on site, but no change from the last reviewed project.
As the page 1 of the summary succinctly says, agendizing this item provides notice to neighbors and other members of the public interested in the project. So there are no comments from the neighbors.
More questions? No? So material palette remains, oh, sorry. I was like, the
yeah.
material palette remains the same largely?
Correct. Yeah.
The surface of the flat roof will be
It'll be probably a built-up roof. We are not going to go with obviously a bright color. We'd go with something with a lower LRV, light reflectance value. Potentially a gravel could cover whatever the roof membrane or built-up is, but it shouldn't really be visible. It's not visible on the approach. I'd say if you're in the properties sitting above the hillside, you'd have to try really hard to see down below through it, but it definitely would be a darker tone.
Do you plan to have a roof overhang or the flat roof?
I'm sorry, what was
It's a
that?
practical question. For the flat roof, I would hope, again, it's not part of this committee, but just based on the personal experience, it's important to have an overhang because flat roofs, especially gravel, are problematic and drainage is problematic. You'll have a challenge. I mean, you know, you're the expert, so.
Yeah, there are overhangs to protect the walls and what's below. Is that what you're referring to? It's not just you know, you can see it on there. There are at least a couple feet of eaves on a flat roof. Yep.
Clearly seen. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? No? None?
No.
Wow. Okay. Quiet group. With that, we move on to the,
I had one more thing, just
Okay.
for Sage.
Sorry.
So you might have noticed, and Sage can answer this, I'm hoping there is an out, but I know there probably isn't with the story poles. We are required, I believe, to install story poles, even though we're going back to formal. We did not install them due to time constraints and the cost. I wish there was a workaround because there's not much difference, but the idea, if not, is we'll have to be put back on the September hearing, continued until they're installed. Again, I will note, story poles of something like this is about 10K plus. And I'd say it's excessive in this circumstance, but I don't believe the town has a method to get around it. So I'll leave that to you guys to debate.
Given the story poles were installed previously, if there's no members of the public that have comments on this project and the ASRB themselves don't need to see the story poles, we can work with the applicant, and depending on what decision is made here, that could be the final decision on the project.
I think I was the only member at the time the story poles were installed 2 years ago. So actually, I'd like to poll the board members on this specific topic.
When I visited the site, I don't know. I doubt my view of the project would change with the same sort of the site.
I agree.
As always, I would comment on quantifying this, right? New story poles which could have been constructed, how different it would be from the previous ones 2 years ago. The difference in the height seems to be very minimal, but it would be good to quantify it for the record. And the overhangs of the wet roof, they're a little bit wider than the original design, but it's so minimal that it probably no one would even see the difference. Just to reconfirm what you're saying.
Yeah, in terms of story poles, that overhang is not even accounted for. We're just talking the wall massing. So that's one of the reasons I provided that picture of the previous story pole install. You can imagine pretty much at the plate height, drawing a square across that, removing the gable form. That's pretty much the height we're talking about.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any strong objection.
We just want to make sure that if there's any members of the public that want to speak online, we have two people who I believe are owners for the other project, and there's someone online noted as guest. If they'd like to speak, they can raise their hand. Seeing no hands raised, and if any members of the public like to speak on this, no, I think they're here for other projects. So just want to make sure. So there are no comments.
And you've noted our consensus on.
Yes, so if that's the end of the discussion, it sounds like the ASRB is supportive of the project, and you could recommend approval of the project, subject to the same conditions of approval that were applied to the previous formal design review. And just in reference, those conditions of approval are outlined in its attachment to, and it's the December 5th, 2023 action letter from the planning director. And all of those conditions would be applicable to this project. So if that's it, you can make a motion to that effect.
I will make a motion that, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Actually, that's a good point. And so based on what I've heard today is that that story polls would unlikely change the opinion of ASRB members, as well as the changes are minimal enough as shown in the original story poll pictures that were provided, that it's not necessary, as well as the town not receiving any comments from members of the public. And for those reasons, we would not require story polls.
Correct. Do we have a motion for that?
Make a motion.
Second. Chair Lindsay,
Yes.
Vice Chair Comra.
Yes.
Member DeGavio,
Yes.
Member Millman, Member Taft.
Yes.
The motion moves.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next project, we have 3985 Woodside Road.
Yes, thank you. Before I begin, I'm going to bring over some material samples for you to look at.
Show and tell.
Okay. For those of you I haven't met yet, my name is Sarah Philippe, Associate Planner with the town. So I'd like to introduce the project at 3985 Woodside Road. The project includes the removal of an existing barn and the construction of a new livestock barn in the same general location. So the property is currently developed with a main residence, as well as 2 ADUs, a swimming pool, and some sheds. The property is 3 acres. It's in the SCP-5 zoning district and is located on Woodside Road, kind of near across the from Wunderlich Park. So the applicant is proposing to construct a new livestock barn right here in the southeastern portion of the property. So that's this area here. There is an existing barn already located in that location that will be removed and recycled or donated to another property. The new barn will be placed in the same general location. It will have a larger footprint though than the existing barn. The barn will not be used for horses. It'll be used for small livestock like sheep or goats. The barn will have 6 pens in the center of the barn, intended for 4 to 6 goats, and as well as some general areas for feed storage, wash and grooming, milking, and a full bathroom and changing area for beekeeping. The barn will also have an upstairs loft area used for storage. There will be a paddock adjacent to the barn on the east side of the barn. The barn uses forms and materials that are typical for barn structures, such as vertical wood board siding, metal framed windows and doors, and a standing seam metal roof. I just want to pull up the rendering. Give it just a second to load. There we go. So the ASRB, as well as the Livestock and Equine Heritage Committee, reviewed the conceptual design review earlier this year. The ASRB made recommendations for the applicant to work with the committee on the formal design review. And so during the formal design review, the applicant met with the committee on 2 separate occasions to discuss the project. So at the first meeting on June 26th, the committee reviewed the project and had a number of questions for the applicant, which are outlined in the staff report as well as attachment D. The committee met again on July 10th to discuss the project in further detail. After a lengthy conversation, the committee still had a number of questions and concerns that they felt needed further clarification. The committee actually also discussed formulating a checklist for applicants to use when proposing barns for animals other than livestock, other than horses. Similar to the checklist that's in the stable ordinance, which is specifically for horses. So the committee recommended that the project proceed to the ASRB for review, that the committee formulate a checklist for the applicant to address prior to any building permit issuance, and that the applicant use the committee during the building permit stage if necessary. The architect is present in person, and I believe the property owner is on Zoom and available for any additional clarifications, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Does anyone on the board have questions? As a reminder, this is a formal review. This conceptual review was January, I think, this year.
February.
The Livestock Committee had several suggestions or purposes on like being at the 4-foot fence to the road. Okay. Is that something we should just push aside that that's going to be addressed anyway by the staff? They've already addressed it.
Yes and no. So certain things like that and some technical items, staff will be looking at closer with regard to the building permit application, such as locations of floor drains, things like that. They would be on more technical drawings. The type of flooring, we'll want to look at that, make sure it's not marble flooring or something like that, just as an extreme example. And also we've been in coordination with the Livestock Committee, and they have a health and safety subcommittee, and it's likely that staff would utilize them during the building permit process to deal with some of these technical things. So that's the no part of it. The yes part for the ASRB is if there are things design-wise that could be affected with any of these items, it's yes, the ASRB could opine on and make recommendations on those items related to design.
Just like we can't really tell someone how to use a building. We can't really impose an opinion on how bars.
Well, a little bit different in that, buildings for human habitation are what they are, whether it's a home office, a bed, a bathroom, whereas barns are allowed to be larger than other accessory structures. And they're specifically allowed to be larger and taller because they are required to be used for livestock. So someone to use it for a private car collection or something like that. When I first started working here, a barn was converted into a full court basketball court, hardwood floors and all, scoreboard and everything. And so the idea is to ensure that barns are for their intended use. So form and function is a little bit interrelated with this.
Whether it's used for goats or chicken horses is up to.
That's correct. All they would definitely the goats, sheep, any livestock. The definition of livestock in our code is any mammal customarily raised on a ranch except for hogs or bulls. Those are what's livestock, and so therefore these types of smaller animals would qualify as livestock and could be used. The barn could be used for those types of animals. That's correct. That is correct. Yes. If they could be converted down the road, that's great, but it's not a requirement. Some designs are designed differently for different types of animals.
Maybe just a comment. Yakisugi is in thing for the siding. There are different variations of it. What we see here is just one of the collection of samples. Probably it will be the one. But in terms of fire, I believe they're fire retardants. So the building department will confirm this, correct?
That's correct. And yes, with this type of siding, it's unique, but we have seen it applied in Woodside. And the architect probably would know better than I, but my understanding is the siding is one component of it, but it's how it's constructed underneath the siding. There are certain fireproofing requirements. So that will always have to be met. And then yes, all of the materials have to, I'm probably missing the right terminology, but they have to be certified by the state for the right types of materials. And yes, they all would be reviewed and checked by the building department and the fire district.
But that's a question. And it's a beautiful material.
Any other questions for staff? No? All right, then I invite the applicant. Present. Wondering why you were sticking.
I know.
Likes it
All
here.
right, Adam Biddle of Architectural Lure again, and I think I'm joined by the homeowners. They're online on Zoom if needed. But good to be back here. I can't remember how many of you were here for the first time we were through on two. Okay, so 3 of you. Perfect. Yeah, since the time that's passed, we've met a couple times, exchanged response letters with the LEHC, and as Sage said in the last one, I think it was highly productive because we kind of realized I'm talking more design at this front end, ASRB, public realm visibility, and their focus is obviously a little more health, safety, technical. And there doesn't exist a guideline specific or checklist for smaller livestock compared to, the whole raising horses and Woodside document. So I think hopefully this might bridge that. We're glad that there'll be a resource hopefully during the building permit review process. From the last hearing, what was requested from ASRB was a rendering and then some material samples. As you noted, yeah, the charred wood, that is the newer element here, the idea, and I obviously took a little artistic license to lighten it a bit on the rendering just so you could see it, but it's meant to sit secondary in kind of below those redwoods. It's about 250 plus feet from Woodside Road where the barn sits, tucked within the trees. The elevation of Woodside Road is almost 30 feet above the finished floor of the barn. And so you're really looking down on this. We thought, the owners wanted just a beautiful traditional barn. And so as Sage alluded to, we did design it. The smaller wings on the side can be converted to horse stalls later on. That's not their intention, but in doing this new structure, it does meet the size requirements, ceiling height, stalls. The depth is designed around that. Their intention is goats here, and obviously the secondary ancillary uses of farm equipment. I don't know if you read the narrative, the whole idea of permaculture, which they're heavily invested on this property, extensive gardens, and then ultimately to orchards. And so that's the concept of it. I'm pretty confident that the technical pieces that, the LHC is going to be a resource for us. We can bridge those no different than we would fire sprinklers, septic design, all the engineering elements. But the idea with this, the new element is the darker charred siding. The other elements you see are in the current main house and ADU. The little bit lighter stained siding, that's the main house. The roof will match the main house, same finish. The windows and doors will be the darker metal. So it's an idea to bridge this. And I'm happy to answer any questions on this. I know this is another unique one, just like the last one, but I'll do my best to answer as I can.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board to the app?
You know, I do have one question that I've brought up once. And I have to say, I do love the barn. I think it's beautiful that we have people restock these barns. And so I one concern last time, I know this is formal, but you don't have to submit a landscape plan.
Well, this would be the stage to submit one. The applicant's not proposing landscaping.
Well, my
So
my
like-
concern last time was the borrowing sort of the website, that what is the fence going to be, and will it be secure, and also going to be able to get out, they're not going to get out, et cetera. And I think we talked about that last time, I don't know if you, it's not a deal stopper, it's only Sage knows that you're going to supply of this, but what are your intentions? Is it to fence all of the Woodside Road area, or what are you looking?
So it's already fenced in around there. I believe there's plans hopefully to submit in the future. New gate fencing along the front. I don't believe that has been produced or submitted. I honestly, no, it hasn't. We've been working on this phase for probably 8 years, working from the back of the property forwards, but fences and gates tend to be more a staff level item these days, but there will be some kind of fence. Yes, yes. And correct, yeah.
Any other questions? Should do more formal reviews.
And so I know a member of the livestock committee is here and.
Yep.
Not sure. I don't know.
I do recall that in the letter from the concept review, most of the feedback was from the livestock committee.
Good afternoon.
Oh, I apologize, Lexi.
Yeah.
We have the owner, and just, they have the opportunity to finish the presentation and then we'll have you come up and speak. The owner's online and they raised their hand. We're just gonna have
Do you
them.
want me to speak or not?
You go ahead.
I don't, it doesn't.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, oh, thank you. I'm Lexi Bartlow, Vice Chair of the Livestock Committee. I'm just here to answer any questions you have. Our charge is to ensure the barn structures are actually being designed for the health and safety of animals. And our second charge, which came from previous staff, because there has been an increasing use of the expanded barn, building properties, to be a lot more generous than any other structure, because it's for animals and usually horses, but we are in the process of creating new checklists for pigs, sheep, and goats, and structures, building structures for them, requirements. So that's a work in progress. But our second charge is because of the barn abuse that has been occurring in greater numbers over the past 10, 12 years. We look at it with an eye towards, is this really for animals, or is this going to be easily converted into, a party house, which has happened. So I can answer any questions that came up. We've done quite a bit of research on the goats so far. So does anybody have any questions?
Are you satisfied with the changes that have occurred? I know that there was so much glass before. We were happy to see the glass doors being switched. Are you satisfied at this point?
We're not convinced.
question.
That's kind of why I'm here.
What do we do about that, Sage?
It needs to be used for animals. So it's bottom line. It will be a code enforcement action should the owner not use it for animals. And that's where we get, I think, into some of the more technical things, which staff does need to review closely. Like I said, flooring is a real issue. Is it a type of flooring that's appropriate for animals? These are interior details that we definitely will be looking at closely, and we'll use the resource of the subcommittee, the Health and Safety Subcommittee, to ensure that whatever is installed in those details are going to be safe for animals to occur in that barn.
Is there any specialized drainage which barn of that type requires?
I wouldn't suggest that there's maybe something, well, I'll defer to the building department if there's anything specific in that regard. But there are just certain general things, such as floor drains. If you have a washing station, right?
Exactly.
That water needs to go somewhere. So those are things that will ensure that if someone says a washing station and there's no floor drain, that would raise some questions. And so we'll be looking at that closely. I know ventilation is a key component. A lot of barns use passive ventilation, but we have seen some barns use mechanical ventilation, such as HVAC units, to heat and cool barns when necessary.
Just following up on this process question. So in conceptual review, the issue of glass was brought up as a safety issue. We're hearing again in formal review, it's being brought up again. It's either the amount or the proximity to the animals. Who owns that decision at the end of how much glass or placement of glass is not satisfactory?
There's not a code requirement.
Okay.
And so it goes down to, again, relying on the livestock committee. If the glass needs to be raised higher and there's reasons for that, that's something that we can work with the Health and Safety Committee to do so.
Okay. Got it.
I don't know. I mean, if anything, I don't know if there's county animal control requirements, but my guess is probably not. But we can look into that further.
So as it relates to the charter of this board, I mean, kind of beyond our purview to make a safety recommendation.
I think in absence of significant issues such as, floor to ceiling glass windows, things that are just very apparent that could not work or even be adjusted in a way that would be a minimal design change. Those are things that should be focused upon. In this case, if there are items, if they had any significant design changes, we'd have to bring it back to the ASRB. But if there are minimal changes in working with the Health and Safety Subcommittee, those are things that we could deal with at the staff level.
Okay. Any additional questions? Nope. Nope. Okay.
Just hear from the owner.
So yes, the owner is on Zoom. They have their hand down now, but if you'd like to, there you go, hands up. So you are welcome to speak.
Hi, hello, this is Patricia. I had heard earlier someone was concerned about fencing, and I can assure you that our entire property is enclosed with a 6-foot deer fence, so no animals could escape and get, onto Woodside Road. So that's just one concern I can, say for you. And as Adam told you, our mission is permaculture, and with the barn we want to start with goats and having them in the perimeter, the inside of the barn. We thought with the glass we could bring in natural light and without having to have the doors completely wide open. So that's the whole point there. And then we also would have doors on the outside that would close, so, to protect, that were solid, that would close at night, and so nothing could get through. So yeah, further down the road, we want to do beekeeping. And we thought, since we're building a structure, having that height for horses later on, if for some reason someone wanted to have horses. I mean, the older I get, I don't think I'm going to start riding horses. And I think that, the amount of work we're going to have with the goats is going to keep us plenty busy, me and my husband. But that's all. I just wanted to maybe assure your concerns that this barn is for livestock. Thank you.
And just, I'd like to add just a few points, and I don't remember her name, but just because that ended on a little bit of a negative front, I will say that the hearings have been productive with LHAC, their committee meetings. Not everyone expressed the same sentiment. I absolutely know that goats can be raised in here in a centralized condition in a barn. I raised goats and sheep as a kid, if you can all laugh and believe, did 4-H, the whole thing. We have a difference of opinion. I'm not going to put goats on a perimeter of a new structure. Absolutely not. They will deteriorate it. It is not safe. Centralized is what you see in a fair, in a 4-H environment. It's what you see San Francisco Zoo. You could go on and on. So we're happy to have their help. They are a resource to us. They're a resource to planning. They're a resource to building. And that's what their use should be for the health, safety. And we're hoping they can provide that assistance on, I mean, even hose bit, there's little things that were brought up. But every other question has been answered, I think multiple times in the narratives and response letters. We agree to disagree on something, but I think we can all agree we can raise goats healthy and safely in this structure. So I think with your purview, it's more the public realm. And then what we've come to is those details, no different than any other system, structural, civil, county health, septic, all those get ironed out in the technical drawings. So that's why they're not in the set right now. No, it was more the centralized, and I think there's a difference of opinion in this goes back to something about when the ordinance was written 10, 15, Sage might know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. The idea is the exception for size, according to some, is it's meant only for horses. I think the town municipal code definition is clear. It's not only for horses. It's for all those ancillary uses. It's written in there. We specifically in the narrative identified on this property with Woodside Road being elevated, multiple structures, it's going to look too busy in combination which is already developed there. So an isolated barn, it does not feel large on this property. I think so I take it from more the design standpoint, one isolated structure there, a little larger than the one that's already there, the prefabricated one, I think completes this site. It's appropriate across from Wonderlic. So I think that's the purview and the difference of opinion here. I have complete confidence the safety of raising livestock, having done it myself, and I know there's so much flexibility in the different abilities to do it.
Thanks. Is there any other member of the public in the room or online who wishes to comment in regards to this project?
Patricia has her hand raised again.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just didn't lower it after I spoke last time. Sorry about that.
No other members of the public are online.
Okay. All right. I'll open it up for board discussion. Anyone have any final thoughts or comments on the project?
I think addressing the livestock concern was that there are recessed lighting fixtures and the upstairs loft and full scale bathroom makes them feel that it's not really just for horses. Is that something why would it be so completely built out to be a residence or, something else?
I'll just note, it's not uncommon for barns to have full bathrooms. It's often people who do barn stuff tend to like to have full bathrooms in their barn to change before bringing that back into the residence. It's just a common feature we see.
And again, that's been answered multiple times in the narratives and the explanation, and you could see the separation of the bathroom. It's not connected to a room. I've made as many moves as I can, no different than a pool house to not be on septic, the same concept, right? It's purely for support space.
One question about glass. Since it's bar, have you looked at other translucent materials besides glass? Or have you not considered those?
We have not considered those. I'm not familiar with products that other than glass and the insulation properties as well. Well, I mean, one of the things brought up by LEHC was the issue right now in that last heat wave, right? You have these old barns that are exposed and the heat gain. I mean, the ability to ventilate and protect is a huge one. So a new structure can do it. And that is one of the reasons that horses and other animals are having issues, because the structures are outdated to the climate we have right now. I mean, that's a more macro level opinion of mine, but those are things we can solve in a newer structure that they can't in an older barn.
Okay, any other comments?
I only have one item I drive past the spot every day, and the only time I ever see one is when I first, well, accidentally, right, when I got spot. It was very well set back, it's right in the room. I just wanted to add that, to people that like, nothing about that.
Comments? No, comment?
All right.
Okay. Would you like to summarize?
So, I don't know if everyone on the board, if the board is, finds the project acceptable, this is formal design review. There are recommended conditions of approval in the staff report. And so if the ASRB finds the project acceptable, you can recommend approval with the conditions of approval in the recommended in the staff report. And just to point out that those conditions also do clarify, one, to make sure we're addressing these items, these more technical items that aren't on the plans at this stage, as well as the ability for staff to work with the LEHC subcommittee to further ensure that we create a structure that is livable for livestock. So with that, if you do recommend approval.
I would like to make that.
Sure.
I'd second that motion.
Chair Lindsay,
Yes.
Vice Chair Comra,
Yes.
Member Ligavio,
Yes.
Member Middleman,
Yes.
Member Taft.
Yes.
Motion moves.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna leave now.
All right, let's move on to the third project, 385 Moore Road.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a wonderful start to your week. This evening, I'm going to be going over a conceptual design review project proposal for 385 Moore Road. The project scope includes construction of a new two-story single-family main residence with an attached garage, detached accessory dwelling unit, pool, and associated site improvements on a vacant lot that is located at 385 Moore Road. There is one desk item pertaining to this agenda item. It's the map that we included. The applicant so very kindly read through the staff report in advance of this meeting and did make one modification regarding the measurement of setbacks. Per our code, we do require that setbacks are measured from the interior boundary of ingress and egress easements that are not used exclusively for this property. There is a front easement that is not used exclusively for this property, as well as a driveway and public utilities easement that is shared between this property and 385 Moore Road. So those two did need interior boundary easement measurements. The applicant has revised that for you guys and has shown that the proposed structure as it stands is compliant with setbacks, accounting for those modified measurement mechanisms. During the review of a future application for formal design review, the town will make the determination if the project is exempt from or subject to the California Environmental Quality Act. Just as a quick overview of the property itself, the subject property is approximately 8.76 acres gross and 7.99 acres net, excluding easements for road right-of-ways, which are not used for the exclusive use of the lot in which the easement is located. All site calculations for this project in terms of your TFA, max main residence size, things of that nature, are conducted using the net lot size of 7.99 acres per Woodside Municipal Code, section 153.005. 385 Moore Road falls within the SCP zoning designation. The subject property is located off of Moore Road, and the site is visible from Interstate 280, which is a state designated scenic highway. The property falls within the boundaries of a town designated scenic corridor. Moore Road is a private road extending between Woodside Road to the north and past 389 Moore Road to the south, where the road terminates at a private driveway. And a town designated stream corridor does extend along the southern end of the property and drains into Atherton Creek. For a little bit more zoomed in context, 385 Moore Road was created by a land division in 2014. And at the time, the project did establish a building and pool envelope, which we can see marked on the topographic map and site survey for the plans. Essentially, that means all above ground improvements are going to be limited to this pool and building envelope, with the exception of the ADU, which can be as close to 4 feet to our property line for state code. And the site, this project did go through ASRB and had an approved project a couple years back. So there might be some name recognition here, as it did have a more recent approval. However, that project did never proceed with development, and the site currently remains vacant. So we are operating under a vacant property here. The preliminary title report and topographic survey associated with this project identify a number of easements on the property, including the following. Thank you as I go through this comprehensive list for your patience. 50-foot wide ingress easement and private utilities easement that sits along the northwestern property boundary. A 60-foot vehicle access easement, ingress and egress, and for private utilities as well, that sits along the northwestern boundary of the parcel. A 200-foot wide conservation easement and stream corridor easement along the southern end of the property. A 15-foot wide easement for road purposes at the front of the property along Moore Road, a 15-foot equestrian trail easement along the southern property boundary, and a 10-foot PG&E easement along the southern property boundary as well. The site ranges in elevation from approximately 170 feet along the northern property line to approximately 60 feet along the center line of the on-stream corridor to approximately 70 feet on the property's southernmost corner. The property contains more than 100 trees, with mature trees along the southern, eastern, and northwestern property lines, and additional scattered trees within and adjacent to the building envelope and within the on-site conservation easement. Little wordy, thank you for your patience on that. The proposed main residence is a 2-story single-family home with an attached garage located in the boundaries of the building and pool envelope established by the restrictive covenant associated with the property's land division. As you can see here, we also have hardscape affiliated with this property, a new sitting area, a new pool, some patio spaces, and a detached ADU as previously mentioned. The main residence is modeled after the French provincial style, and the facade includes a wide variety of detailing, including columns, quoins, fenestration of variable sizes, forms and sashes, decorative railings, lighting with invisible bulbs, and exterior trims. The proposed main residence is a 2-story, largely symmetrical building, which has greater massing than typically seen in Woodside developments. In pre-application meetings and initial rounds of project review, the staff has expressed outstanding concerns regarding the design of the main residence, as the culmination of the exterior detailing and massing on the proposed home creates a sense of formality that does not typically align with the town's rural character, as outlined in the town's residential design guidelines. The residential design guidelines do encourage applicants to strive for simplicity in their designs and restrain the use of excessive detailing to be compatible with the town's rural vernacular. Furthermore, building heights and bulk should be limited in response to site topography and neighborhood conditions. The ASRB, we do ask that you discuss the massing and detailing and embellishments of the proposed main residence as they pertain to the project's alignment with the residential design guidelines. The ASRB should discuss potential remediations to the design formality, including but not limited to reducing the amount of detailing, minimization of bulk, etc. Although floor area calculations will be confirmed at the formal design review level, the applicant has included preliminary floor area calculations with conceptual design review. And based on their preliminary calculations, this project will require a maximum main residence size during formal design review process level. The proposed main residence has been measured at approximately 29 feet, 7 inches in height, and at its most extreme difference between existing grade and the structurage, and it is therefore compliant with our 30-foot maximum height. In addition to the main residence, the site proposal includes approximately 836 square foot detached ADU located on the northwest property line. The ADU closely mirrors the proposed main residence in both design and materials. And the proposed detached ADU design measures at 15 feet 4 inches, and it is therefore compliant with the maximum accessory height established by the Woodside Municipal Code. While the overall ADU height is compliant with the maximum accessory structure height for the zoning district, the tallest plate height has been shown a little bit variably between a couple sheets. It's currently marked on one sheet as over in one portion of the structure. We do need to be compliant with an 11-foot plate height maximum for accessory structures. However, I have had brief discussion with the architects, and they're planning to resolve that so that there's uniformity across all plan sheets. So they do anticipate moving that towards compliance with the 11-foot maximum plate height permitted. Materials for the proposed main residence would include stucco, slate roofs, aluminum windows, and aluminum guardrails. The provided digital materials board provides a proposed color palette that includes shades of white, gray, and black. The ASRB should discuss whether revisions to the proposed color palette should be implemented in order to increase the alignment with the residential design guide's preference for muted colors that blend in with the natural landscape. These recommendations should account for the project's potential visibility from a designated scenic highway and adjacent properties. The project plan includes removal of 10 trees within the footprint of the proposed development, consisting of oaks and pines. Of the 10 trees proposed for removal, 8 trees total meet the significant tree definition pursuant to Woodside Municipal Code Section 153.005. While the applicant has called out 10 trees for removal, 3 additional trees are shown within the footprints of the driveway in the planter retaining walls that they are showing on the property next to the seating area. So the applicant should clarify during formal design review whether they're going to slightly move those site improvements or whether they're going to remove those trees from the property. Prior to submitting for formal design review, all revisions should be clear. And the proposed design will be retaining over 100 mature trees on the property with preservation of trees along the southern, eastern, and northwestern property lines. Members of the project team for 385 Moore Road are present at this meeting. They're going to be giving us a little bit of a more comprehensive overview of the design components associated with this project shortly. And the staff is happy to answer any additional questions regarding application of residential design guidelines or the code on this project if you have any at this time. Thanks for your patience. I know this was a bit of a longer one, but any questions, happy to help.
Thanks. Does anyone on the board have questions for staff?
That's one clarification. The road that the driveway is on, that's using another property, or is that on the bottom of the lot?
So the easement is on property for that 387 access easement. A portion of it does fall within 385 Moore Road, but property boundaries has not been included within the net lot area for the property because it is for shared access. So they don't get any like bumps in the size of the structure due to that, given that it's not solely affiliated with their property, but it does fall within their property boundaries.
I have a question. It's more on the design and you summarized it very nicely of what our requirements are, guidelines are. At what point in the process did you convey this to clients? I mean, all along, I mean, did they come to you a while ago with ideas with branch house? Or I'm just wondering, is this news to them hearing the comments for the first time, or has this been ongoing? Or, what was the process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't complete the preliminary applicant meeting with the applicants. However, Sage did complete that preliminary meeting, and there was initial conversations about an alignment to the residential design guidelines. We had some small changes that needed to be made to this plan set in order to ensure its compliance with the actual municipal code. So at that time, we did issue an incomplete letter for their first submittal on this project. And we again put in a rather substantive comment set addressing unalignment with the residential design guidelines. I did have conversations with the architect who had touched base with their homeowner, and they indicated that they weren't comfortable making changes until they got a little bit more guidance from you all regarding how we would like to make modifications and your preferred methodologies to make modifications. However, they have been informed for on alignment since the beginning of this design process and since their preliminary pre-application meeting with Sage.
Sure. No, I think Jillian's very thorough. I had an initial meeting with the architect early on, primarily to answer questions that they had from a technical standpoint. During that meeting, they had some of the design kind of fleshed out, and I did provide some of those comments about formality. And then, as Jillian noted, with the application review, there were some comments that we outlined in the incomplete letter, as well as we had an opportunity to meet with the architect after that incomplete letter went out. And, this is one of those things where, a property owner is really has a kind of specific design in their mind. And they, sometimes it's acceptable for certain sites. You get into the Las Pulgas Estates. Those buildings are much different than a lot of buildings in Woodside. And so it's really a determination of, is this something appropriate for the site? If so, or if there's some modifications that might need to be made. It's really, the intent of this conceptual design review process to get some early feedback. So staff has expressed some feedback early on, and then now the ASRB can opine and determine if there are necessary changes that need to be made. If not, can move the project forward without recommendations. So I think at this time, the owner and the architects are really looking to see, what changes may be necessary, if any at all.
Are there any other questions for staff? Otherwise, we'll move on to the applicant's presentation. Do you need a break? Okay. We're going to take 2-minute break. Any final questions for staff before we move on to the applicant? Yep. I had a question with regards to slope. It does appear, trying to transpose the survey to the placement of the home, there does appear to be a part of the home that falls within this 35% slope that's visible on the surveys. How is that going to be addressed?
Yeah, so we have received, and I believe it's an attachment affiliated with your staff report that was issued. The project engineers did issue us a letter indicating that the slope that falls within the building and site development footprint was created through non-natural interventions. There were some runoff issues from parcel A affiliated with the original broader property that was subdivided. And it's the belief and the study of the engineers, and they have made the assertion that that runoff did cause non-natural slopes in excess of 35%. Per town precedent, we typically do permit development on slopes in excess of 35%, so long as a licensed civil engineer is able to certify that those slopes are man-made, and prior to being man-made were 35% or less. They have made that assertion at this time.
Got it. And I'll just further clarify on that. This was actually something that occurred before the subdivision. I worked on the subdivision project, and it was always intended that that area would need, that slump would need to be fixed as part of any development project. And there wasn't any significant geotechnical issue in which that could not be accomplished.
And it was caused by water, though? And
Yeah, it was all determined to be a man-made slope as part of the subdivision, and it was understood that that development would be able to occur in that area.
And final question is this driveway that's going to be built in the easement. So if the neighboring property 387 is developed some point in the future, they will share that driveway or access to both properties?
Yeah, so there's a point in the ingress egress easement that will be a shared driveway. But then the property does contain a private section branching eastward in towards the building and pool envelope, which will be for the exclusive use of 385 more. And then the other property does have easement-based rights to continue developing driveway through the property to access 387. At that time, it's assumed that that portion that extends beyond 385's access point would be for the exclusive use of 387.
Got it.
And just to note, it's actually a requirement that they share this driveway. The subdivision restricts access, does not allow access onto 385 Moore Road other than through this shared easement. So the frontage when you do a subdivision, you can restrict access off certain parts. Same with, they had the same restriction on the back of their property at the 280. And so it was a requirement of the subdivision as was designed for them to share the driveway, which in turn, you see a handful of the trees that need to be removed or in that location. That's always been anticipated for the development of the two properties.
Since you were in the room, I was curious what the motivation for that restriction was.
I'm sorry.
What was the motivation for that restriction?
Minimize the number of driveways onto Moore Road. Part of the project itself was, the town it discourages panhandle lots or flag lots when doing subdivisions. The council ended up being okay with this this shared driveway, as long as it didn't create other further curb cuts, so to speak, into Moore Road.
So basically, just to clarify, there's that, when you go down the road, there's that space there's a home, and that's 389, I guess
Yep.
it is. And then there's a gate that has a lock on it.
Yep.
This is off to the side of the gate. And does
That's
that
correct.
gate, go down to, is that the shared gate or?
Yeah. The applicant might be able to understand. I know we issued a permit for a new gate there. I don't know if it's been installed or not yet. That was from 387 Moore Road. So the 387 Moore Road has an approved project. It was actually a project approved on this site, as well as drastically different. And I believe it's probably expired since, but, yes, there's also their entrance, the shared entrance, is also acts and has an easement recorded, to act as a vehicle, turnaround for the street, because there's no turnaround at the end of the street. So that was incorporated as part of this subdivision. So they cannot gate off that particular area. That would be for whether it's a fire truck or any member of the public who finds himself at the end of that street, they could turn around in that area.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if this question really should be directed to the applicant. But as a frequent commuter on Highway 280, which is designated a scenic corridor, it is hard without a topo collocated with the outline of the project. It is difficult to figure out what will I see driving on 280, looking up, assuming it's safe. Will I see the house or it would not be visible?
I think the applicant has done some light renderings that'll help answer that question in their upcoming presentation. So if you have any outstanding questions after that, they might be able to provide some visibility clarity just because they have more renderings available.
And then just an observation, clearly style-wise, it is more in nature of Los Altos Hills or Atherton. But I'm a big proponent of if not too many people see it, and the owner wants this style, let it be. But it's clearly rather non-typical for Woodside. Right? But it's for that reason the only concern would be how it's visible or invisible it is from 280. Everything else is purely academic.
Another piece that will be helpful, the next step or where we end up with this is story poles will help with that once those are installed. Yeah, there will probably be some minimal visibility. The house is angled in a certain way that you wouldn't see kind of the widest part of the house. But the applicant, as Jillian noted, could probably best explain.
Yes, and the element which actually is clearly more of a French country meets Parisian style is the guardrails. So if guardrail is not visible from the freeway, no one cares. That's my subjective view.
Okay, I think that's a segue to the applicant's presentation.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for giving us time to present today. My name is Malka Junaid. I'm the project architect. Our clients are really sad that they could not be here today. They were traveling. Sage and Jillian have been amazing to work with. They have been talking to us for quite some time and guiding us. And they said that, there is no meeting in August. So there is this chance if you guys want to get feedback. And we did call our clients, and unfortunately, they are stuck in a country which is having a lot of riots, and there are no phone lines and internet connection. So they did manage to get hold of us literally last second, and I think we had 2 days to submit. And they said, please proceed forward because they are in a time crunch. Their parents are moving in with them, and there's a deadline when they want the house done, which I'm trying to tell them realistically never happens on time. But so they said, we don't want to waste another month. That's why we are here, and they are not here. So we want to just apologize on their behalf. This is very important for them. So it's not as if they're not here just because they don't care. Nini, she's our lead designer working on this project with me. I'm the project architect. Just want to start with the formality of the project and why we've been talking to Sage and kind of having a lot of discussion on the design front, why we thought it'll be better for us to come to the board and get feedback because of how we were approaching this site. So we can go to the next slide. I'm sorry, you'll be my clicker. But our clients bought this property, as you were informed, there was a previously approved project on this site. It was a larger project, more complex, a lot more, I would say a lot more impact to the site. Our clients' needs are not that drastic. They do have some very strong personal preferences, and they actually looked at the site quite a bit and the neighbors before they bought this property. We have been engaged in talking to the neighbor who's, not we, but our clients have been, who has a permit already, and it's their easement which is going through the property. As you can see on this map, which we've already gone through, we have 280 corridor right there. Our site is 385. And then we have 50, 60, and then 389. The reasons these 4 addresses are on this site, because we're going to show you what these 4 projects look like. Because before we start any design work, we get clients who really want to build something which our job is to guide them, if it's possible, and gently explain them why it might not be possible, but also on their behalf do an investigation as to what they're asking for, is it even feasible? So we actually did that prior to starting the design work on this property. Go next. It is I don't know if a lot of you have visited the site. I think with Pat, you mentioned that I guess you know which road it is because there is a gate there. This is our site right in the middle. 50 Moore Road is the neighbors on the left side. Right side is our easement, which goes to the other property. There is 280. I'll be very honest, putting our life in danger, we shouldn't have. We tried to see if we could get a picture from 280 of the site. And first, we're not allowed to do any drones on 280, so we couldn't do that. It just wouldn't let it fly. We tried to get our drone close to 280, it just wouldn't go, which was okay. But there is a lot of vegetation on 280 at that end, and our site is actually lower, so we were not able to really get any images from there. So we are hoping that the story poles, when they're up, it'll be easier, if anything is visible, to be able to see it from 280. We can go to the next slide. This is just a little bit before we get into our project, just to get you oriented. That's the edge, the best we could figure out with the oak that we are saving and all the trees, where our edge of that pool seating area and then the ADU roof would be, just to give you an idea how far away we are. We are about nearly 1,000 feet from 280 to the furthest part of our project. So we just wanted to put that in just for context purposes. And you can see it's a very barren site, but we have a lot of vegetation on left and right side, which we are very happy with. You can go to the next slide. So we want to show you what are the projects that we looked at. Now, these are not visible that much, but thanks to technology and Google Earth, This is how we don't spy on neighbors, but this is how we kind of do our research as to what's happening in the neighborhood. Sometimes it's not easy for us to sit and go for hours looking at microfiche in towns to see. But as you can see, these are direct neighbors of our project. And as you can see, they are very formal designs. These are not barn designs. These are not homes. And I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. It's very subjective, the styles. But we just wanted to put a context as to where we were coming from. We were looking at it, what's in our neighborhood. How is it impacting 280? In fact, I believe 50 more is really close to 280. Because that's the one which is on the left side, closer to the 280 marker, which was in the previous slide. So we just wanted to show and start our presentation with this context, that we don't start design work without really researching what's happening in the neighborhood. And thanks to Nini, she spent like hours trying to get these images, which were really helpful for us to share with you, because I know when you drive there, you won't be able to see any of this. And of course, as landscaping is being put in, things get matured, you get more privacy. We can go to the next one. So this is our site. I keep telling our clients they are blessed with a ton of easements on this site. This was not an easy site to work with. It is a massive site, but I would say mostly, over 65, 70% is unbuildable. And there's a sliver in the middle, which is just perfect for us, but it starts at a very narrow end. We can go to the next slide. I don't know if we added that, but if you look at the site plan, I'm not going to bore you with all the stuff written on the left. We'll go through that in a minute. But if you look at the site plan, you can see the contours under our project. Now you can see our dilemma, because the dotted lines you see around the house, that's the setback line. And of course, the ADU is allowed to encroach in the setback. But as you can see, this is a very, very tight site. Now, the more further down we go, the more difficult it becomes for us to bring the drive-in compliance. The more we move down, then we have to bring the fire truck here, which becomes a little bit more challenging. We work with Lee and Braze. They are amazing civil engineers. They've worked in this, I think they did the subdivision also. So that's why we ended up working with them, and we've done a ton of projects with them. We actually work backwards. We work with the fire department. There is a turnaround right at the fork that is being shared by the two properties. This is the max we can be without putting another massive area further below. Now, we did include another turnaround a little bit on our property, but these are all things, I'm just giving you a background as to why the house is located where it is. Second, in our company, we try not to disrupt the site too much, regardless what the house looks like. We want to make sure that we are retaining the site footprint as much as possible and not affecting earth movement too much. We did try and keep as many of these trees as we possibly could. As you can see, we really don't have much choice in that upper corner. We really shoved the house as close to the setback line as we could. And we have worked with Lee and Brace, our soils engineers, to really retain this oak next to the pool. It is a beautiful tree, and our clients really, really wanted to retain it. It did give us a little bit of a heartburn in the beginning, but it's really pretty tree, and we are hoping that we won't have to move the house further because it's just going to impact that tree. But you can see the contour lines. The way our setback is done, the contour lines are not really in a very perfect angle. No matter what we do with the house, the contour lines are not really, parallel. It's just not possible for us to do it any other way. We can go next. We can just go next. This is more stuff. So I just wanted to kind of touch upon the formality as has been stated. Actually, before I go further, just looking at this image, I was actually very happy that there was a first project before us, the #1 project that got approved. It has the same color scheme, same material, and absolutely the same stone. So I was very happy to see that. Our house is actually not visible, and we'll show you in a minute. Even from Moore Street, we are plus minus 25 feet below the road. This is kind of that frontage which is facing Moore Road, so we are kind of recessed in. We did keep Normally for these styles, you need to have quite a few steps leading up to the property. We wanted to keep it really low slung, so we kind of kept only 2 steps going in. Go next. Roof pitches, we work with our clients and convince them that, we know this is the French Chateau look you want, but we just cannot go with a 912 roof. And we worked it as best as we could to retain the style and still keeping it low profile. This is the rear that we thought is kind of more important, I think, for everyone because it's kind of going down the hillside. We have actually stepped and walked through the project when we went there first time. The whole discussion was that we want to step down the hillside as best as we can. And as you saw that the contours are not really in our favor. So we worked with Lee and Braze and with the town's requirements of retaining walls and the ADU height structure and the access to the driveway. And we did step the house down, the second floor, then to the first floor living room. We went to 3.5 feet lower, and then the ADU is further lower. And this is how we've kind of tucked this into the hillside. We did remove the tree from the rendering because it kind of takes over the house. But that oak tree is actually right outside this pool in this corner in the bottom right side. And this is just something that I was talking about earlier, kind of just lowering the project as we are going down the hill and making it more one-story as we proceed down. They would have preferred a one-story house, but there is just no way we could do that without adding steps. And that is something it is very important for them not to have because of the 2 sets of parents who might be moving in with them. Just giving it another angle from the, as I call it, the front, because this is facing the Moore Drive. This is the gate I think you were talking about, which is the easement which goes in and it shares the driveway with us and with our neighbor. And we just wanted to show you kind of, this is where we are. I know it's a very dark picture, but the site slopes down. We did a second image we'll show you next. That's got the rendering in it. We've just put this rendering without any vegetation because we just wanted to show what's there. That's about a nearly 25-foot drop from Moore Road. And if I go to the next slide, you'll be able to see, there already a lot of vegetation there, but we are going to be putting screening in. This house is not going to, just like the other homes that we showed you, if you drove around, you wouldn't see any of them. So we just wanted to show you that our home is actually not going to be visible from here. We've tried our best and we don't think it's visible from 280 either. So overall, we think we've been kind of trying to make the site work without impacting the overall dirt removal too much. Our clients were very specific, no basement for the reason, not that because they weren't happy that they can get more space. It's just like the idea is not to impact it too much, even though it's a very formal design, but the footprint is the footprint. And we wanted to make sure that we were being very careful how we were putting this house on this site. So we just wanted to share with you that we have a lot of constraints with setbacks, easements on every corner. The lower part is all sloped. And we worked with Lee and Braze just because the original project that got approved, they had a lot of historic knowledge that they've been guiding us with. But we are here to answer any questions that you have, and we are looking forward to guidance from the board here. So we can go to the next step.
I might start just with full disclosure. About 13 years ago, we lived on Moore Road, the second house left. And we lived there, and I raised my children.
Oh, awesome.
And we lived there or something like that. So I know that street real well. I actually know this property extremely well. I have a young boy, his friend lived down the street, and they used to, their friends lived off of Valley Court and up of Sargent that way.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to dirt bike through your property. That's how I know about that, where the horse trail is.
Yeah, because there's so many easements on it.
No, I do. Well, there wasn't an easement. We just, that was the easiest way to get there without going down around the high school.
It
and
is
back
a
over to
public
Walker
site.
Road.
Finish
Yeah.
after this question.
So anyway, I have to say, it is very visible from 280. I mean, to say it's not, this is a scenic corridor.
Mhm.
That all of those houses, a lot of those houses on Valley Court, that's Appleton, that's Woodside, are visible. And that lot is quite wide and right there. So I'm having trouble kind of buying into that it's not visible.
And that's why we are hoping that the story poles will help all of us because we tried.
Even we had another house that came before us that was across the way over on Quail, which is on the other side of the freeway. And the residents on Moore Road complained about that house. So there can't be both. You know, you can't see one way and not see the other way. So
Mhm.
I am questioning that, just having spent so much time on dirt bikes down there. I was much younger. Yes.
We were, to be fair, we were actually focusing on 280 itself and not across the thing. So that is something I'm hoping.
No, I am.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm hoping that, again, the story poles is the easiest way for all of us to be able to really see. And that is, I think, when we'll have to do it as the formal design review.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this project does require a planning commission entitlement. So given that they are going to go to planning commission for grading on this property, it is not required that they installed story poles for conceptual design review. As the applicants have outlined, we were also kind of coming up on a short deadline to make sure that they got in anticipation of August recess. So story poles were not installed at this time, but they will be installed in advance of
Yeah,
planning
sure.
commission.
Yes, on the Lindenbrook project, that was a White House, but it was not on the scenic corridor. It is just about it's tucked away
Mhm.
underneath. That, you know, no one can see it. There's just a few horses right across the street from it. And that's about it. So I'm just a little confused. And these aren't questions, these are more comments. So I'll let the other people on the committee ask you the questions, but I do have some concerns, knowing that property and the street as well as I do, because it was a horse property, a lot of the rural character and the barns and everything. So these houses, I know some of these houses and the one particularly right next to you at the end, that was before 280 was ever built. And that was the Showcase Designer House. Remembers that. And that was grandfathered in. Those houses were built in the 20s and have just been added on. So it's not quite, they're not new houses.
I mean, in terms of visibility, I would like to see a vegetation management plan. And should see how the vegetation would screen it from 280 and other areas, but at least in terms of the color, and you know, I'm going to read something from the design guidelines I have up. Lighter colors should be used in settings where they are appropriate, such as meadows as opposed to redwood forest. And this is definitely not a redwood forest. It looks much more like a meadow to me. And then, so yes, it's a French chateau in stone and light stone, but the lighter color, according to the design guidelines, fits. And if it was a farmhouse versus a French chateau, I don't know if it would come off the same way. But so far in my ancillary review and design guidelines as we've been sitting here, I don't see anything that says one style over another is preferred at Woodside.
Is that a question?
It's my statement of observation.
Okay. So let's thank you for that presentation. There may be questions. Let's actually focus on questions for the applicant. Do you have any before we move into board discussion? Okay.
Did you consider using more than just the white material throughout? Like when I'm looking at the fire pit area and it's such a mass, so white and stark, any consideration?
So for landscaping, we, to be very honest, didn't spend any much time on that as yet, except we wanted to get the hardscape in time for the meeting. But for the house, we did look, this is a cream limestone that we are looking at with the Venetian cream plaster. again, we are here for feedback to see what we can take back to our clients. If you can go back to the slide, which is where we are seeing the whole property, where you see 280.
Or the cornerstones, the limestone, and then the
It's,
rest of the stuff.
yes. And then I just want to, because of what was just said earlier. Yes. So as you can see, as I said, we have a lot of trees, but just on the outskirts of the property. Everything else is just bare. So we are looking at you for guidance of how you think we need to blend this in and take it back to our clients. But again, what we were recommending and we already have that oak, and then we are planning to plant trees around that pool area and stuff, because there's no way they can landscape that entire hillside and it doesn't look that great. So we are going to be shielding that and also shielding the house, vice versa. So we're looking at you from guidance, but we had looked at quite a few materials, and these are the ones that our clients are really comfortable with.
You've studied probably the noise from 280.
Yes, we are going to be using the triple glazed windows.
Triple pane windows.
Yeah, triple pane windows. We have actually did a little bit of a study. The interesting thing is at second story, we have more of a bounce. Lower areas, we haven't had that much. So we do understand it's going to be more the sleeping quarters, just because our side is set down from 280 and not up. So there's a little bit of a difference there, but we have that in mind, yeah.
Considering the zoning and the size of the lot, is there a reason why you didn't plan for one of the living spaces to be a junior ADU and take advantage of the 280 ADU allowance?
Basically, the ADU is the only requirement they have for their parents. And then they have kids. If you look at the floor plan, it's mostly the family kind of gathering area on the first floor where the grandparents can also come, the other generation. So it'll just 3 generations in the house. So all the sleeping cells are up except the grandparents, which are in ADU. So they really didn't have any specific requirement for another junior ADU. We have enough space in the ADU if they need some nursing help in the future.
Maybe just a comment. Well, I'll end with a question. It's beautifully designed on the lot, which is very difficult to fit your design in. And apparently the clients who certainly have their set of mind, and it's difficult to change that. If the question is, again, the view from the 280, you're saying that story pose would answer that question. I think it's important to kind of keep track of the landscaping, which may shield it from the view, not to violate that scenic corridor. And the final question is, why in the world would someone put Toyota Camry in that rendering?
I should tell that to the renderer.
Is the same thing, the rendering, when you look at the house, there are so many different iron design details. Is that just rendering? That's not your intention?
So right now they are, of course, not thought out or really like flushed out details, but the idea is to have some sort of those details at the windows and doors and that upper, as you can see, they're not really balconies, right? But they're more like French balconies. So we want to make sure that those details are going to be done nicely, but we wanted to make sure that we are not just sending you a rendering and then coming afterwards with all these things. We want to at least put our design intent in front of you to get feedback that we are coming with this iron grills and things like that.
Then when it gets to fencing
Mhm.
somewhere down the line with having the iron grills, how would that work with our rural community view?
Oh, you're talking about the fencing on the property?
Yes.
Oh, we are focusing on just deer fence with a lot of vegetation. The idea is not to have this, and we do have, we had discussed a gate, but it'll be tucked in where it comes, because we have an easement, so we can't put a gate there. It'll be you come in and then it'll be a gate coming into our property that has not been designed as yet. We will be hopefully working with Zatire, the landscape architects on that. But the idea in towards more, and that is, I mean, it's a huge property. They are definitely not thinking of any iron thing, because we don't want to see it. They are more into plants. So the idea is to just plant it from wherever we can.
Any other questions? No? Okay, anyone from the public in the room or online have questions on this project?
There are no members.
There's no one online.
Okay, good. All right. Then we'll close the public hearing and open it up for board discussion. Who would like to kick us off? Can you speak in the microphone?
I will make one more comment about color. One of the first properties I looked at when I joined the ASRB was when we re-reviewed, I think it was 70 Valley Court, which has a very similar color palette.
We were just looking at the pool,
You're right,
the house is the house.
but it falls under our purview.
It's the pool.
Valley Court? That was our,
That was just the pool,
no.
right? Wasn't it just the pool?
Entire project.
So 70 Valley Court, you guys were looking at just the pool at that time. What Member Middleman might also be referring to is that the building had a similar color palette that was previously approved. And I'll just note that what's been noted on here is 50 and 60 Moore Road. Those are 50 and 60 Valley Court. And the 50 Valley Court, it's a very formal building. That was built probably about 10 to 15 years ago at the most, probably about 10 to 12 years ago.
And what's Amoroso's? You know, the one, the first one on the left-hand side, that, yeah, but the Tuscan home there. I mean,
Yeah, on Moore Road.
Yes.
Yes, that's, yeah. I mean, that's older. I've been here for about 16 years. That was well before that. No, yeah.
First, and then it's not.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I'm just referring to that was before. It's at least 15 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so the point I was trying to make is that that property also fell under our purview for design guidelines, and that was approved with a similar color palette.
Saying no.
No, Sage was right. The house was pre-approved. We were specifically looking at a relocation of the pool.
You guys were looking at a relocation of a pool. It's just the house color was previously approved some years ago.
My point is that that house falls under Woodside design, Woodside. That house was not approved by us.
it had to be approved somewhere along the line.
It was approved by the ASRB and Planning Commission, just not this particular, just not this.
Different
specific-
committee, but still.
So
We
the,
did the pool.
this specific board members looked at the pool. The house that is under construction was previously approved by previous ASRB members and planning commissioners.
Wasn't part of that.
No, that's all, that is the border of Woodside. You have to drive through Atherton to get there. But that right at 70 Valley Court is the border of Woodside.
And that was my point. Thank
That's
you.
correct.
Sorry.
Also to your point, when we went there was so much stone. Every ounce of the property was covered and it was kind of feeling massive, to say the least.
Does not feel as massive.
I don't think so. I mean, I have some concern about that whole fire pit area, but I recently was in Santa Rosa and saw something very similar to that. And it does have a mass to it, but I kind of feel like the material is what's going to calm it down a little bit. You know?
Any additional thoughts or comments or feedback?
No. This doesn't have wood on it. It doesn't have any of the rural components. It is on a scenic corridor that people will see. And the neighbors for Moore Road will see this. There are some older houses, the Davies house, the Gardner Daly house, or another house. These things were built in the 20s and 30s. Maybe it didn't have nonsense. And then the big houses that you really see are the ones in Atherton. That I think if you're driving down Moore Road, the houses, they're the first one on the right is an old farmhouse. There are a lot of farmhouses. This isn't the style that I think says this is a rural community. And why I think it's pretty, and it might be pretty in some places, it just doesn't seem that the owners or the design or you guys even thought about our guidelines at all.
Maybe to mention specifics, again, closer to 280, there's a pretty large dissipation pit which Lay and Braze planned. So in the planting plan, it may be noted that it should not be as visible from 280, not only the house. And the landscape wall is much closer to the freeway than the house itself. So very much like the swimming pool area on Valley Court, there's a similar consideration. It would be visible. In all probability, the wall will be visible. But the house seems to be discreetly placed, and again, hopefully we'll see proof that it would not be dominating the highway 280.
I'm kind of feeling like it's so interesting. Sorry. It's so interesting with what's going on in Woodside right now to try and restrict someone from building a French provincial home when you've got housing element going on. So I'm kind of like, ugh. So I'm having a tough time in thinking that we should restrict someone. If they want to build a style that's not rural, how can we make it a little rural? Maybe we push back to add some stone to it. Maybe it doesn't have to entirely be a white home with black windows. If maybe the cornerstones are changed and they seem a little more rustic, woodside, rural kind of vibe, that might get it to be more palatable for people, instead of everything just being white, white, white. If that wall to the fire pit area had a different stone, and maybe that's a multi-textural type or multi-tonal type, to me, that would feel like you're making the effort instead of this just being totally random.
There's white farmhouses with black trim.
It's not the black and white, I think, really. There's a lot of black and white, seriously, but that's not.
It's modern barn, so.
Yeah, but
Exactly.
It's here.
Yeah, it's totally here, and I'm all for individuality personally, but 2 cents.
All right. So I'm not hearing any concerns about the scale or how it's massed, how the various volumes are being organized and treated. I'm not hearing concerns about visibility from Moore Road, but everyone's stressing the importance of the visibility from 280.
It's
Yeah.
pretty minimal, right?
It's
well
very
below
discreet.
grade. Well below grade.
So story poles might really help us to be able to.
I just personally, I feel like to encourage this type of design, to keep having them go down, to have them invest more money in story poles. Maybe I mean, for me personally, I can't approve this house. It is not a woodside house. It doesn't meet any of our suggestions or guidelines, requirements at all. And as much as I think people should be able to build their house, I mean, they knew going in that they could come to the town and they could talk to Jillian and Sage and come up with ideas and look at other houses that have been built. So I just don't want to encourage this to go any farther, but I may be the only one that feels that way. And I do find it's massive.
Planning director mentioned that, we have homes in Las Pulgas Estates that many of them reflect similar attributes. But none of those sit within a scenic corridor. I think the concern here, if I tried to summarize it, is that regardless of what attempts are made to disguise this home through landscaping, it's going to be a fairly signature home driving north on 280 as you approach Woodside. And I think that's the biggest concern I'm hearing from my fellow members. I'm sure you can appreciate the majority of projects we review are contemporary farm homes, for lack of or fairly generic description, but that's most of what we see in this style. This approach is fairly rare for us to deal with. And I think what you're hearing is our sort of reaction to it is like, we're a little uncomfortable with it. If we try to get specific about what is it that we're reacting to, I've heard mention of the balcony guardrails. I think generally the amount of ornamentation on the property, like we could point to columns, we could point to the corner detail of every volume having the stone detail on it, emblematic of a column. I think we're just generally reacting to, like, is rural France the same as rural Woodside? Right? And I think we all feel that, no, they're not the same. So I think in summary, I think I'm going to suggest, I'm going to make a motion that we actually move to continue this project, to come back with a design that's more reflective of what the design guidelines attempt to describe as suitable for the town of Woodside, which is probably less ornamentation, more subdued. And I'm going to request that because of its placement on a scenic corridor, that story poles will be a requirement for passing conceptual review. Because I think the visibility of this project is ultimately what's going to the suitability of the project, given its visibility, is ultimately what's going to encourage success. Is that sufficiently summarized as a motion?
It is, and what I'll just note a couple other things, and you guys can tell me just to, what I've heard is looking at materials and colors to possibly grade variations in the colors between materials, looking at stone versus the stucco, as well as the formality of the guardrail designs, the ornamentation of columns, former guardrails, the coins. I'm looking at all these pieces together, not maybe any one component is what the ASRB is after, but looking at these components in totality and how they could be minimized to reduce the ornamentation as well as the formality as discussed, and also trying to minimize the visibility, not just with landscaping from the scenic corridor. And to install story poles, as noted, for conceptual design review, in particular with this type of massing.
That is the motion.
Argumentation and the color.
Yes. Okay.
There a second?
Do we have a second? No? Okay. Does anyone want to make a change to the motion?
Consider use of landscaping as a counterweight for all the kind of negative factors we all agree on.
So I'm sorry, that's to include coming back at contextual design review with a more detailed landscape plan.
Yes.
I particularly would like to see difference. I don't think you can make this into something else that it is. I would like you to go back to maybe one person and talk to them and come up with designs that are more in keeping with what we've recommended, what other people have done. You know, it's really the material palette. It's not just the color of the stucco. It's, does it have wood? Does it blend in? I mean, the idea is you wouldn't have to screen this house so much, kind of blend it into the hillside. If you didn't notice it, if it was sort of a beige, greenish thing, color, and it, you know, spread out a little bit different, and there was wood and cedar and things that we see in a lot of the buildings here. That's what I would like to see, but I mean, they can say what they want.
Can we get some more feedback?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Just want clarification so that when we go back and talk to our clients, we have the right information. We normally typically actually don't take on projects in the hillside or in California anymore if they are in high fire zone with wood. We are putting wood, but we're usually using aluminum or charred wood, which is fire resistive. I just want to make sure we're taking the right information back to them. My initial feedback that I was understanding was that yes, it's formal, but we should come back with something that can blend in because of the concern of 280 and the formality of the design. That could be done with color scheme and stones and things. Or are we specifically having guidance that it needs to be wood? I just want to clarify it so that I can take the right information back, because I know that is something we will not be able to do because we actually are, I don't know how much aware the town is. I know a lot of our clients who can afford it are actually not having insurances, but we are having major issues with our clients getting insurances since we do a lot of projects in Portola Valley, Los Altos Hills, Los Gatos. So we are actually keeping with aluminum or charred wood and trying to keep away from any other natural material which will be fire hazard. So I just want to make sure that I have the right info so that when we come back,
So
yeah, as
there-
long as their colors, it's
we're
not
just-
specific. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
We're just still they're still in the deliberation. So we
I
have a
just wanted
motion,
to
and then after whatever the ASRB decides, we'll make sure we get all this information to you in writing. So you
Okay,
have that.
I just wanted to.
But I just want to address the question. The question is like, must it have wood? And the answer is no, it must not have, or it does not require wood. Better way to put that, right? So in terms of feedback, it's not that it has to have wood. I think
It
that,
just sounds like it's more generally the overall design. It's so, I sat today just to flip through the general guidelines. And I read through the first 4 pages of the guidelines and I was like, there's nothing in this project that really fits the guidelines. Not that we were, so again, it's a challenge to keep to the rural community vibe and try and approve a project that looks so totally different. Agree? I mean,
I mean, I don't disagree with that statement, although I also don't feel that precedent changes because the members of this board change. And previous boards have approved houses in the scenic corridor with this color palette and houses in
good
other
point.
areas of Woodside in this style.
Well, not this style.
not this time.
Well, I mean, Sage,
A
what
more-
was the thing you said about Las Palmas Estates?
No, Las Pogos Estates is a part of town that has very ornate designs. The last one that was approved there probably was over 20 years ago. The one at 70 Valley Court is a little bit more recent.
But before the most recent residential design guides.
Yeah.
That's correct. It is
What was
before.
the design of 70 Court?
It's a very formal design.
Temporary though.
It has the balustrade railings and
Yeah.
Not all.
Yeah. No. And this is certainly much more tasteful than that.
I would agree with that statement.
In French, the French country style, designers on the board, color wise, they are not necessarily even like this color. I think, darker colors. It's like grayscale, and not as like Mediterranean,
But this
bright.
is not French countryside. This is not countryside.
It is not country.
So, look at the colors.
That's a good point. Yeah, and it's the white, really the massive amount of white that you see.
Yes, it's,
That you're right, if it was a muted color,
It-
it would be more palatable. But, you know, I think we turned out some piece.
unless it's modern barn, but where it fits. But with this
Very
style
minimal.
combination of a kind of European style or meets Mediterranean with bright colors, that's kind of overloaded. Again, I'm not, you guys are pros, so.
Okay. So the motion still remains to continue the project.
Okay, and so
So-
we had a motion. I don't know if anyone's changed your mind to second that motion. Otherwise, is there a new motion? I know I just have some differing opinions, so we would look to what the majority of the board would like to do with the project. Your options are to continue the item at the conceptual level, and there's some benefits to that for applicants. I know it does feel like the project is being prolonged, yet it's before you get into a lot more of the details that are necessary for formal design review. So that's an option. The other option is to provide recommendations to make changes and address those at formal design review, at which time they would have more details provided. And it's an option, although one, I don't think we're there. Project designs can be rejected. Typically, that usually occurs after, it rarely occurs, but if it occurs, it's something usually that's best offered a continuance with design changes. And then if the applicant comes back and decides they don't want to make design changes, then the board may decide to reject that design. But at this time, the more viable path forward would be to have a continuance with recommendations to come back at the conceptual level, or to provide recommendations and have them address that with formal design review.
Can you repeat the motion?
So the motion was to continue the item at the conceptual design review level, to reduce the formality, and given that it's visibility from the scenic corridor, as well as the massing. And in reducing formality, to look at guardrail designs, the ornamentation such as columns, the coins, the entryway, I think, is something that could be looked at. The guidelines talk about having understated entryways. And then there was other comments about installing story poles to look at the visibility from both Moore Road and the scenic corridor, as well as to provide some more details to the landscape plan. And then lastly, that I don't think I mentioned just here, but I have it noted, is to look at the colors and to darken the tone of the colors, and not necessarily having all materials match in the same color, to provide some variation in colors.
Can second that motion.
Kind of complex.
We'll have it all outlined in a letter form for the applicant.
Chair Lindsay,
Yes.
Vice Chair Camera. Member Delgavio,
Yes.
Member Middleman,
Yes.
Member Taft.
Can I abstain?
It's good to provide a recommendation unless there's a reason to abstain.
Again, I'm like, you cannot really plank this in Yakutsugi. You cannot really change design. I mean, the layout is fine. Everything is fine, but the how it presents itself is either completely off or it can be subdued. And there are many parameters, many dimensions in many ways how it can be subdued. And in either case, it's difficult to imagine how it would look without story poles.
You propose.
Right.
Yeah, so it's on the list. So if it's number one, story poles is a must.
Yes, that's included in the motion.
Landscaping,
There.
screening is there. Considering color scheme
Yes.
is there. Consider changing, but it would violate the design of the French country, but But again, guardrails and such, those are less noticeable items. They would be nice to look at, or nice to change, but adjust.
I
But the
think that's
first four
okay.
items are critical, right?
So we have so far 3-1, and then do you vote in favor or against the motion?
I'll,
You have an opinion?
I have an opinion. I'd say yes, let's continue.
Okay, the motion moves.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll get you a letter within the next day or two.
Okay. Final things. So we have no director's report, no meeting minutes, no.
No, I do have a very piece of sad news that I want to convey to everybody, but
No.
They're doing away with it?
this is, no,
This is our last
this
meeting.
is Sarah Harper's last ASRB.
Oh,
Sarah,
Sarah has, Sarah has gotten a upward position move to South San Francisco to be the deputy city clerk.
it's not
Congratulations.
in South City.
So we're very happy for Sarah. We're very sad for us.
yes.
Ooh.
Thank you for all your support.
When's your final day?
August 1st, last day.
So we won't see you at our next meeting.
That is my rotor guy.
Okay.
Other than that, no other items, and so we can adjourn.
So
With that, I
it's-
adjourn the meeting at 6:38.
it's a bitter